Welcome back to the continuation of our LinkedIn clone using Ionic and Angular. In this video, we'll focus on making it mobile responsive. So as you can see, we've added in this tab bar and we can click that and it will trigger the modal. And of course, if we were to type something in here, we'd get that data back in our main component. And just to demonstrate the responsiveness of this, if we were to do a refresh, we can see that we've got our main page here. And as we start to scroll, the left and right columns disappear. And as we get a little smaller, parts of the navigation bar start to disappear. And the tab bar actually appears. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll start off by generating the tab component. So let's just run an Ionic generate component. And I'm just going to close a few of these tabs up and record the data, the folder structure. We have our backend running, and then we have our LinkedIn. So you just need a CD into the LinkedIn folder, and of course have the API running. And in our folder structure, in our app, we've got this home folder. So what we want to do is we want to generate in the components of that home folder some tabs using Ionic generate component. So let's get that. And we can see that we've generated these tabs here, or the tab component at least. So before I get started on building out the tabs, I do want to make some tweaks. So let's just run an Ionic serve just to see where this application's at. So we can see that there's no responsiveness in this, and their tab in the navigation bar goes to the next row. And likewise, if we do resize like this, these two components here don't disappear. So we're just going to go ahead and start to work on the responsiveness. And I'm going to bring this modal up, but this is also going to be coming up in a mobile view. So we can see that it's sort of up the top there due to the margining. And this one here is okay. So let's just go ahead and work on that class. So recall that the modal has to be, or some of the CSS needs to be defined in the global SCSS files because it's popping up outside of the application in the DOM. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to make this margin top 100 pixels instead. So let's go ahead and save that. And now in our mobile view, we get the create posts pop up on the screen where we want it to. So let's start to take a look at our home page, which is containing all of these. So I'll close this. I'll open up the home page. So basically what we want to do is when we get to a certain screen width, we want to hide this advertising and hide this profile summary component. So there's actually a utility class from Ionic that allows us to hide it based on the screen size. So that's just iron hide. And then you can specify the screen size. So let's say XL, which is 1200 pixels, just a little larger than our ends of the boundaries of our navigation and contents. And then you can either specify up or down. So I'm going to hide it when it's below the 1200 pixel cutoff. And I'm also going to add this to the advertising component. And I'll save this. So we can see that things start to disappear, but the margining or the positioning of the create post component is not centralized any longer. So we can start to work on some of the styling here. So for the home page, we can, in the content container, which is encapsulating the 3 components, what we can do is we can actually add a media query here. So let's just say if the max width is at that 1200 pixel cutoff, let's just make the width auto. So rather than this 1128 pixel specified length, once we get below close to that width, we want to just say we want the width to be auto. And because this is flex, we can centralize this using justify content and center. And we can just remove a little bit of the margin top here by saying margin top 0. So we can see that we've now centered it and things are looking nicer, and there's a little less margin up the top because when we're on the mobile view we don't need so much margin. But the actual card itself is still remaining the same size, so we'll need to address that. Before we do that though, we can see that in the header we have this wrapping here, so I'm just going to remove some of the icons and just leave the LinkedIn logo and the drop down, because these icons will go down into the tab bar. So let's open up our header component and also the associated styling of that, and let's just take a look and remind ourselves what we got working with here. So in the Ion header we got a toolbar, and then we got some buttons, so that's where we got the LinkedIn logo and the search bar. And then in the Ion grid, this is where we start to lay out things. So we have the home, the network, the jobs, the messaging, also the notification, and so on. So in the styling, what we want to do is we want to, actually we don't need to be working in the styling, we can do it directly in the header with the utility classes provided by Ionic. And basically on these columns, which are the containers for our icons and text, we can add a Ionic class called Ion hide, and we can do this at the tablet size or medium, which is around 768 pixels. So when everything's below 768 pixels, we'll just remove these, and we can add these to each of the columns we want to hide at that cutoff. So home, network, jobs, messaging, and also this notifications here. So let's save that. And now we can see that those icons are no longer there unless we're up above the cutoff. So that's the header component. We will come back to using this event, this present popover, because we'll be calling that from the tab. But we'll come back to that. Now that we've done the header tweaks, we can make some tweaks to that start post component so that it preserves, or it takes up the width of the screen and no more. So rather than making it fixed, we'll make it scale appropriately. So let's go ahead and open up our start post component. And we'll open up both the HTML and the CSS. So this is an Ion card, and in the header it has the image and the button, and it also has a bunch of other buttons. So what we want to do is we really want to just target the width here of the card. And what we'll do is we'll just do that with a media query. So in Ionic there's a small breakpoint, and I believe it's 576 pixels. So let's just use that cutoff there. And we want to make the width a little bit smaller here. And we're also just going to duplicate this a few times. So there's not too much space between the card and the boundary of the page. So I'll make this 420. And let's say the max width when it gets to around 440. We'll make this 340. And when this is 360, we can make this 280, let's say. And you can always refactor this using various like flexes and other styling, but I just want to quickly get the layout going. So basically our card, it now shrinks up until the cutoff, because we're not going to be, we don't really need to design for anything less than 300 pixels. And if we take a look at this iPhone 6, 7, 8, that's 375 pixels, and that's sufficient. So one thing you did probably notice though is at smaller screen sizes, the buttons start to go off, and we actually don't even want these buttons on a mobile device. We just want to have this part up the top here, so we can just go ahead and hide those, because when you get the pop-up here you get some more buttons again, so it's all good. This is just here for show on larger screens like a desktop, but we can actually go ahead and remove those for our screen size. So we can just come to our HTML file, and where we have this Ion card content which contains those buttons, we can once again add a Ion class with the Ion hide, and when everything is less than small, which is around the 576 mark, things will start to disappear. So 600, 576, and then we see that those are no longer there. Alright, great. So we've worked through the start post styling. Now we can start to work on our tabs. So in our tabs component, what we can do is we can let's just get our tabs going. So what we want here is we want to wrap it in an Ion toolbar for formatting reasons, and then we want to have Ion tabs, and inside the Ion tabs we have an Ion tab bar, and inside that we have our buttons. So we might have Ion tab button, and each button, it contains an Ion icon and also a div for the text. So we'll need to add this to the module. So let's open our home module, and in our declarations we can get our tabs component, and they will auto import, and now that removes any of those errors there. So let's just work on the first one. So let's just say we want the home icon, which has a name of home, and we want home here, Now what we want to do is we actually want to call this from the home component. So we've got our header, we've got our content of our page, and fixed down at the bottom we want to have the app tabs, and they're going to have a class of iron hide medium up, because that's precisely where we have the logos at the top in the navigation bar disappear. So we can save that, and also, well, let's just see what that gives us. We can see that we can't actually see that, so we need to fix the page such that we could see that. So in our styling, let's go ahead and make the host the place that's using this flex, such that we can use justify, well, we got justify content. Let's just make that flex start, and we'll make the minimum height 100 VH, and we'll make the flex direction column. And since the minimum height's 100, like the full screen, what we can do is for the app tabs, we can say we want a margin top of auto, which will push it to the bottom. But we'll also need to add something to our tabs. Actually, this class here needs to be like this. So I just missed that there. And now we can see that we get our tab at the bottom, and right now we just got our one tab. So let's go ahead and get the rest of them there. So we no longer need that, but we can duplicate our button, and we can get 5 in total, so I can get 1, 2, 3, 4 more. Now there's an icon called people, and this is going to be my network. There's add circle, and this is going to be the post. There's also the, and I might copy this one because it has the notification as well. And let's just get, so we can go ahead and just get that from the header actually. So in the header, we have this part here. And we can also go ahead and get the final one, which is jobs. So let's save that and see what that gives us. And we can see we get our 5 icons here. Now we want to, well, first let's line up the styling of this notifications here, and then we'll make this post trigger as this one here does, to trigger the modal. So let's come to our styling here. Now let's just say we want the to be a little more horizontally adjusted, and bring it up with the margin top. And we can go ahead and we can make the weighting a little less. So inside we can have this iron text component, and then we can just move our 2 to there, which means that we can just have an inline style here for the font weight. we'll put that to 400. And we may as well make the font size a little smaller. And let's just move it over slightly so it looks more centralized. Move it to the left a little. And we'll see what that gives us. Alright. So let's just make the tabs a little bit higher and a little bit of spacing there. And that should do it for the tabs. So in the styling component, for our iron toolbar, we want our height to be a little bigger. So we'll make that 50 pixels. And the iron tab button, or each of the buttons, we can just give that a padding top of 4 pixels. And I don't need a padding bottom because I've made the height bigger, and that by default puts more space at the bottom. So there we go. Now I just want to make the button work, and this works in the same way that it works in the start post component. So let's just open up the TypeScript here, and we can inject the modal controller into our tabs component. So we'll get that, and then we'll do a control period to get it from Ionic Angular. And we can just go ahead and present the modal. So we can just copy this here. And we'll just need to get the modal component in here. And all we really need to do now is just call that. So on our iron tab button for the post, we can just add a click event here, and we can say present modal. And there we go. So let's say we say hello. We can post something, and we get that data back in the component. Now let's just check that everything else is working in terms of when we resize it. So we have our desktop view, then our summary and advertising components disappear at the breakpoints, then the search bar does, and then some of the icons in the navigation bar do, and then it gets brought down to the bottom here, and we get our post component. We can still scroll, of course, and if we add it in the mobile view, we can see that things still scroll, and we can go ahead and we can post something, and then we get that data. So that's how we can do some mobile responsiveness in Ionic and Angular. In the next video, I would like to start to work on some of the authentication side of things. So first we're going to lay out the auth pages and configure the routing, and then we're going to go ahead and actually build out the functionality for the role-based authentication. So stay tuned for that one, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.